There's a certain kind of man who disappears. Not dramatically, he just goes quiet. He stops answering the group chat. He turns down the invitations. He shuts the door, picks one thing, and pours himself into it for weeks. People call it antisocial. They call it selfish. Some quietly wonder if he's having a breakdown. But psychology calls it something else entirely. And it might be the most powerful thing a human being can do, because what looks like a man pulling away from the world is often a man building the version of himself the world isn't ready for. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why deep focus, what the internet now calls monk mode, makes people so deeply uncomfortable, and why that discomfort says far more about them than it ever does about him. This man isn't new. He's ancient. Long before we had a word for it, there were people who withdrew on purpose. The monk in his cell. The scholar bent over a single problem. The craftsman who worked alone for years on one thing nobody else could see yet. Across every culture and every century, there have always been men who chose solitude, not because the world rejected them, but because they had something to build the world couldn't give them. You probably know one. Maybe you are one. He's the friend who vanishes for a month and comes back sharper. The colleague who eats lunch alone and quietly outproduces the entire team. The man who would rather sit in silence than fill it with noise just to seem normal. The psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi spent his whole career studying what happens when a person loses themselves in deep, focused work. He called it flow a state. So absorbing that time disappears and the noise in your head finally goes quiet. And here's what he found. Flow doesn't happen in crowds. It happens in solitude. We're going to walk through 7 reasons deep focus intimidates modern society, and why the men who master it are quietly becoming the most dangerous kind of person there is, the kind who can't be controlled by approval. Let's start with the one almost everyone gets wrong. Number 1. Solitude and loneliness are not the same thing. In fact, they're opposites. And confusing them is the single biggest mistake people make about this man. Psychologists draw a hard line between the two. Loneliness is isolation. You didn't choose the ache of being cut off when you desperately want connection. Solitude is different. Solitude is a room you walk into on purpose and lock from the inside. Researchers who study it have found that chosen, comfortable time alone is linked to higher creativity, better emotional regulation, and a stronger sense of self. The lonely person feels the world pulling away. The solitary man is the one doing the pulling. So, when this man goes quiet, he isn't running from people. He's running toward himself. And he already knows the difference, even if the people around him don't. But solitude is only the doorway. What actually happens once he steps through it inside his brain is where this gets fascinating. Number 2, deep focus physically rewires the brain. This isn't a metaphor. It's biology. When you concentrate hard on one difficult thing for a long stretch of time, your brain doesn't just use the circuits involved, it strengthens them. Each time a specific pathway fires under focus, the brain wraps it in a layer of fatty insulation called myelin, which makes that pathway faster and more efficient. The psychologist Anders Ericsson, whose research became the foundation for the idea of deliberate practice, showed that world-class skill isn't mostly talent. It's thousands of hours of exactly this kind of concentrated, undistracted effort, and that effort demands solitude, because myelin doesn't build in a mind that's being interrupted every 90 seconds. And there's a second layer to this. Deep, undistracted focus is also the state in which the brain consolidates what it learns, sorting the day's raw effort into permanent understanding. Constant interruption doesn't just slow that down, it stops it from happening at all. Every ping is a tiny demolition of something that was trying to form. So the man in monk mode doesn't just come back rested, he comes back rebuilt. Every quiet week was his brain literally laying down new wiring. And that leads straight into something most people, even the men themselves, get wrong about what they're doing. Number 3, monk mode is not the same as hiding. This is the nuance almost everyone misses. And it matters, because the two can look identical from the outside. Psychology separates 2 engines of behavior, approach, and avoidance. Avoidance shrinks your world. You retreat to escape something painful, and every retreat makes the fear a little bigger. Approach does the opposite. You step back from the noise so you can move towards something meaningful, a skill, a project, a question that won't let you go. True deep focus is approach, wearing the costume of withdrawal. It only looks like running away. Underneath, it's the most deliberate kind of running toward. So the man in genuine deep focus isn't avoiding his life. He's assembling it quietly, one focus block at a time, while everyone else assumes he's simply gone missing. Which brings us to how the people around him actually experience that absence. And this next part, most people get it completely wrong. Number 4, his silence feels like rejection to everyone else. Here's what the people around him see when he pulls back. They don't see focus. They see themselves being left behind. There's a reason for that, and it's wired deep. The neuroscientist Naomi Eisenberger ran a now famous study showing that social rejection lights up the same brain regions as physical pain. To the human nervous system, being ignored doesn't register as neutral. It registers as a wound. So when this man disappears into his work, the people close to him don't process it as a personal project. Their brains process it as being shut out, as pain. So they push back. They call him cold, distant, arrogant, selfish. Not because those things are true, but because his absence genuinely hurts, and the mind needs somewhere to put the hurt. If you're the kind of person who thinks this carefully about the people in your life, who wants to understand what's happening underneath the behavior instead of just reacting to it, then you already think differently than most. It would mean a lot if you hit subscribe. We make videos like this every week, real psychology explained in a way that actually makes sense for real people. Now, for the part almost nobody is honest about. Number 5, there is a real cost, and it hides in plain sight. Because here's the truth the internet's monk mode fantasy leaves out. The same solitude that sharpens a man can, past a certain point, start to calcify him. Human beings need calibration. Other people are the mirror that keeps our sense of reality honest. Research on prolonged isolation shows that when someone spends too long inside their own head with no outside feedback, their thinking can start to drift. Small distortions harden into certainties, social skills go stiff, and the inner world slowly becomes an echo chamber of one. The gift and the trap live behind the very same door. Solitude that builds you and solitude that isolates you feel almost identical from the inside. So the man who truly masters deep focus isn't the one who disappears forever. He's the one who knows exactly when to come back out, who uses the cave but doesn't move into it. But where does this pull toward the cave even come from? To understand that, you have to go back to the beginning. Number 6. For many of these men, the inner world was the first safe place. This is the root underneath all of it, and it usually starts far earlier than people think. Temperament research, going back to Hans Eysenck and carried forward by writers like Susan Cain, found that introverts aren't shy or broken. Their nervous systems are simply more sensitive to stimulation. A level of noise and social input that energizes one person floods another. For a boy wired that way, the crowded, loud, unpredictable outside world can feel like too much, too fast. But the inner world, quiet, ordered, entirely his own, feels like relief, feels like home. And a child who learns early that his richest life happens inside his own mind grows into a man who returns there on instinct whenever he needs to think, heal, or build. So his solitude isn't a phase, and it isn't a symptom. It's the oldest, safest room he knows. He's just still using the door he found as a kid. And that brings us to the last one, and honestly, the most important, because it explains the intimidation entirely. Number 7. A man who is at peace alone cannot be controlled. This is the real reason deep focus unsettles the modern world. It has almost nothing to do with the work itself. Think about what our entire culture runs on. Attention, approval, the fear of being left out, left behind, unseen. Nearly every hook that moves people, every notification, every trend, every social pressure pulls on the same lever, the terror of not belonging. Carl Jung called the lifelong work of becoming your own whole self individuation, the slow process of no longer needing the crowd to tell you who you are. The man who is genuinely comfortable alone has quietly stepped off that lever. He can't be bought with validation, because he isn't starving for it. And that is the threat. Not that he thinks he's better than anyone, but that he's free in the one way most people never manage to be. You can't pressure a man who is content in his own company, and a world built on that pressure doesn't quite know what to do with him. So the next time you watch a man go quiet, shut the door, turn down the invitation, and disappear into something only he can see, you'll know what you're actually looking at. You're not looking at someone who's broken, or bitter, or running away. You're looking at someone who found the one room where he becomes most himself and had the courage to walk into it alone. Someone rebuilding his own mind in a silence most people are too afraid to sit in for even 5 minutes. He isn't cold. He isn't lost. He's doing the quiet, ancient work of becoming someone the noise could never make. And the people who understand that, instead of taking it personally, are the ones who finally get to know who he really is. If this spoke to something you've felt but never had the words for, I made a video on why the world's most intelligent men so often choose to be alone. It goes even deeper on this exact truth. It's right here when you're ready.